Meh, where are you? Come here. I need to tell you something. Old Man Ben's voice echoed through the house. Mett, who was lying near the window on the bed with his eyes closed, suddenly awoke, his face a grimace. From outside, the old man's voice echoed in again. Mett, get up. It's almost noon. Why are you still sleeping? Inside, constantly being roused from his sleep, Mett grumbled back, his voice thick with annoyance. All right, I'm up. What's with all the shouting? Mett then sat up, his movements sluggish and tired, clearly not having had enough sleep. A faint smell of alcohol still clung to him. Standing outside, Old Man Ben heard his son's irritable tone. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, sighed, and shook his head with a look of weariness. He mumbled to himself, "My eldest son, grown up, yet still like this. When will he ever get a wife and give me a grandchild?" He looked up at the sky and sighed again. Though old man, Ben knew his time was near. His greatest wish at this moment was for his only son, over 40 this year, to finally find a wife. And rightly so. At that age, all the young men in the village had found themselves a job. Not necessarily rich, but enough to keep their families from hardship. That's why getting a wife wasn't hard. Old Man Ben thought about his son again. It was no wonder he couldn't get a wife. He spent all day hanging out with the village loafers, a bunch of good-for-nothings who only knew how to eat and drink without doing any work. Every day, they'd gather to drink. Sometimes people would even come to Old Man Ben's house to complain because his son had snuck in and stolen their things. Old Man Ben sighed just thinking about it. This son of his might just ruin his last humble dream. He looked up at the sky, thinking of his deceased wife, and said, "My dear, if you are truly sacred, please guide our son. My only wish now is to see him married with children, with a stable job, not associating with those delinquent youths anymore. That would be enough for me. Then I can rest in peace with you." Tears welled up in the old man's eyes. Inside the house, Mett now stumbled out, looking annoyed. "What's the big deal, Dad, calling me awake so early? I just got a little sleep." Old Man Ben heard his son's voice from behind him and quickly wiped away his tears. He turned to look at his son and said softly, "It's almost noon, Mett. It's good to get some fresh air. Lying around all day isn't healthy." Mett pouted and retorted, "And for that you have to shout? How can I be healthy if I can't get enough sleep? Look, my eyes are still half closed." Old Man Ben shook his head in exasperation at his son. "You come home drunk, making a racket, keeping everyone from sleeping. It's me who should be complaining. You're over 40 now. When are you going to find a job, get a wife, have a child, give me grandchildren to hold? You can't keep living like this." Mett's voice rose again. "Don't worry about that, Dad. There's always time for marriage. Finding a job takes time. If you want to get rich, you have to find a good job, not break your back in the fields like those other guys. Who knows when they'll ever get ahead?" Old Man Ben sighed at Mett's words. He had heard them countless times. In truth, there was some truth to what Mett said. If you wanted to get rich nowadays, you couldn't just bury your head in the fields like everyone else. But Old Man Ben wished his son would actually do what he said, instead of just talking big and then going back to drinking and doing nothing. he said sadly. Even if that's true, look at you. All you do is drink all day, not doing anything productive. When will you ever get rich then? Waking up only to be nagged by his father, Mett was thoroughly irritated. He snapped back. Everything takes time, Dad. You can't just get rich overnight. Going out drinking is also a way to socialize with people from downriver. Things are changing now. I heard people from downriver are planning to bring electricity here. If I get close to them now, maybe I'll get a job with them later. That's when I'll have money, not by drinking with those other layabouts. Old man Ben listened, and though he didn't quite understand, a glimmer of hope sparked in his heart. This was the first time he'd heard his son talk about such a thing. He'd lived for decades, and this talk of electricity Mett spoke of, he had no idea what it was. Would it really be better than farming or making wine? But anyway, it seemed Mett finally had a plan. Old man Ben approached his son, his face beaming with joy. Are you serious? So, when are those people from downriver going to bring this electricity here? And how will it do it? Mett stammered a bit, unsure how to answer. Truth be told, a few days ago, while drinking at a friend's house, he'd met some people from downriver. They just mentioned coming up here to assess the situation and would soon invest in bringing electricity from downriver to serve the villagers. Mett heard the concept of electricity and asked curiously, "What is electricity, sir? We up here have never heard that word before, so we have no idea what it is." The older man among them replied, roughly, "It's like this. Before, if you wanted light up here, you had to burn oil lamps or beeswax candles." Right? Mett and his friends nodded. One man pointed to the oil lamp in the middle of the house and said, "That's right, you see? Everyone here uses oil lamps, and that's considered quite good. Almost everyone has to use beeswax." The other man nodded and continued, "Compared to that, electricity is a world apart. Soon, when electricity comes here, you won't need these things anymore. Electricity can light up this entire house, just with a single light bulb." The men were surprised to hear this. Now, the whole group heard the concept of a light bulb. Sensing their confusion, the man continued, "People call this an oil lamp because it uses kerosene to produce light. A light bulb uses electricity to glow, not oil. That's why it's called an electric light." The whole group gasped in amazement, and so they immersed themselves in the stories of the people from downriver. The visitors even promised that when electricity arrived, they would give these men jobs. Not grand jobs, but enough for them to earn a living, so they wouldn't have to toil in the fields like others. Mett listened, but still didn't quite understand what this electricity truly was, or if it would really help him live a better life. Old man Ben kept asking, pressing for details. Mett finally had to tell him, "I don't really know, Dad." But he said to wait a short while, and they'll come up here and definitely give me a stable job, so I won't have to work in the fields anymore. Hearing this, old man Ben was even more overjoyed. He looked into his son's eyes, knowing his words were true, not a joke. He wanted to say, "That's good. If you have a job, work hard. Forget about getting rich for now. Just take care of yourself. Oh, then when the time comes, getting a wife won't be difficult." Hey, Seeing his father's change in attitude, Mett no longer seemed annoyed and added a few more words. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of myself." "Your son has changed," Old Man Ben beamed. That day, he was more cheerful, doing odd jobs, sometimes even humming a tune. After his father stopped questioning him, Mett went back to bed for a nap. When he woke up, he left the house to meet up with his usual drinking buddies. Soon, a drinking table was set up. Mett then asked, "Is this dog meat?" The guy from downriver mentioned that their dogs are friends, and no one eats dog meat. Thinking about it, I guess he's right. Mr. Thorne, sitting nearby, said, I think he did say that dogs are companions, not food. Isn't that right?" Mett nodded. "Yes, that's what he said. Dogs are friends, not food." Jack looked at his friends, then nodded approvingly at what was just said. "So, from now on, let's not drink dog meat anymore." Mett couldn't help but think of the loyalty of the dogs his family had raised over the years. Another friend, Jack, hearing this, scoffed, "Friends or not friends? If we don't have dog meat, what else are we going to drink with?" His immediate, almost insulting remark made Mett stiffen. He glared at Jack and said, "What do you mean by that? Are you calling me a dog?" Jack remained silent, a slight smirk playing on his lips, which irritated Mett even more. Mett was about to punch him when his friends intervened. "All right, that's enough. Don't start trouble. Let's just drink and be merry." Mett stopped, still somewhat angry, but after a few more drinks, the group was back to normal, no one paying attention to the earlier incident. Mett then looked at Mr. Thorne opposite him and asked, "Hey, is what those guys said the other day true? Are they really bringing this electricity thing up here?" Mett asked this because one of the men they met earlier was a distant relative of Mr. Thorne. That's why they invited Mr. Thorne's whole family over and had a drinking session with these people. Mr. Thorne frowned and said, "I don't really know. That day, he just said the situation here is very good, and in a short while, they'll send people to implement it. But he didn't specify when." Mett's face fell slightly. "Well, so that means it might be true." Mett then asked about the job that man promised them. Mr. Thorne immediately replied, "Of course. He's a friend of mine. He also said that when they come up here, they'll need workers for various tasks, and bringing people from down there would cost a lot of money. So, using local people is best, and the wages will definitely be generous." He also said that anyone with potential might even get training for specialized work, though I don't really know what that means. "But don't worry, we'll definitely have jobs, my friends." The whole group exchanged joyful glances. Finally, they would have something to do. In truth, these guys did want to work to earn money, and secondly, to gather and drink. But when it came to farm work, they were disheartened. None of them wanted to lift a finger. Amidst their joy, Jack suddenly spoke up. "Being happy is good, but who knows when they'll actually come? By then, we might all be starving to death. And those rich families around here are getting really cautious. Some even got big, fierce dogs. Just looking at them gives you goosebumps. For the past few days, we haven't been able to steal anything from anyone, nor have we managed to dig up any graves. So, we won't have any money to spend again." The group of lazy men heard this and felt disheartened, quickly downing their drinks, waiting for someone to say something more. Being lazy was their nature, So this group had a history of petty theft. Yet fate was cruel. Their talent for stealing was like a natural gift. Every time they acted, it was a smooth operation, and no one could ever catch them red-handed. So, this group continued to operate freely throughout the region. Once, a household, though unable to catch them, vaguely recognized the group of men fleeing with stolen goods. When they went to ask at their houses, the men denied everything and even threatened violence for being falsely accused. So, people only gossiped amongst themselves. They believed that one day they would surely catch this lazy bunch red-handed and deal with them. The whole group was deep in thought, wondering where to get money, when Mr. So, the remaining man grimaced and said, "I heard there's a place where we can make a living. If we pull this off, we might even be able to quit our current profession before those people from downriver arrive and give us jobs." The men exchanged eager glances. "Where is it? Tell us." Mr. So looked at the group, now serious. "The other day, I was walking around the market and I heard people talking. They said that if you go a little way into the western forest of Bing, you'll find an abandoned temple. They say it's quite eerie." Mett immediately cut him off. "An abandoned temple? What's it to earn? You're talking about going there to steal some old bowls to sell, right? Forget it." Mr. So quickly silenced him, his voice serious. Let me finish. Some people heard about the temple and thought it was just a normal thing. Probably just newly discovered, so people were talking. But I heard someone say that those who found the temple went inside and discovered it was full of gold and jewels. They said there was a lot. They even said that just taking a little from inside would be enough to live a lifetime. Hearing this, the men trembled slightly, swallowing hard. Mett stammered, Is that really true?" But Jack next to him dismissed it. "If it were true, those guys would have emptied it already. Why would they leave any for us?" Mett and Mr. Thorne nodded in agreement. "Ah, right. If that were the case, those who found the temple would probably have taken everything, leaving nothing for us." Mr. So waved his hand and shook his head. "No? They said that because it's an abandoned temple, they believe it's sacred and didn't dare touch anything. So they left it all there and came back empty-handed." Jack smirked. "Seriously? Money and treasures right in front of them, and they just leave it? If this story is true, then those guys must be incredibly stupid." The other men also chuckled. Mett then continued, "But this story is so hard to believe. An abandoned temple in the middle of the forest with gold and jewels inside? I don't think it's true." "Hi." Mr. So replied, "Well, I'm just telling you what I heard. But now that we have nothing, it's worth a try. Otherwise, we'll just starve to death. Go there and see what happens. If it's true, won't we all be rich?" The man fell silent, thinking, unsure what to do. Jack then said, "You have a point. But no matter what, I still find this hard to believe. How about we listen around a bit more and only decide when we're sure? If we go now and there's nothing, it'll just be a disappointment." The group, agreeing with Jack, continued to drink. The men decided that for now, they would temporarily find some house to rob, taking whatever they could find to sell for money. 3 weeks quickly passed. At this time, The men were gathered at the edge of the forest, the rumors about the temple still fresh in their minds. After spending time gathering information, the whole group could confirm that the rumors about the temple were entirely true. So they decided there was no point in sitting around waiting for the people from downriver when they were nowhere to be seen. 4 men, completely covered in dark clothing, Mett among them, were furtively whispering at the edge of the forest. After a moment, the men proceeded deeper inside. Mr. So led the way as he had the most information. Jack followed, then Mr. Thorn and Mett brought up the rear. The cold in the forest made the whole group shiver. Mett walked step by step in the dim light, trying to push through the dense vegetation in the forest. From the moment he set foot in there, Mett felt not only the cold wind, but also a sense of dread. Each step the men took on the dry leaves on the ground made him shiver involuntarily. At times, Mett felt as if there were footsteps behind him. Several times, he stopped to check who was behind him, only to realize he was the last one. He hurried to catch up with the 3 men in front. No thanks, but after a few more steps, he heard footsteps again behind him. Mett quickly pulled the others back and asked, "Hey, can you guys hear other footsteps besides ours?" They all looked at him, not understanding what he was saying. Mr. So said, "I don't hear any footsteps, Mett. What are you asking?" Jack and Mr. Thorn echoed this, making Mett even more confused. "What I mean is, can you hear any additional footsteps? For some reason, I keep feeling like there's a dark shadow following behind me. But when I turn around, there's no one there." The others looked at each other, then shivered slightly. Jack, annoyed, snapped, "What nonsense are you talking about? There are only 4 of us, and you're the last one. So who else could it be? We're going deep into the forest. Don't make up stories." Mett was annoyed. He clearly heard a rustling sound behind him every time he took a step, like something walking on dry leaves. But now he didn't know how to explain it. So he just mumbled an aha and continued walking. The group followed each other, slowly making their way through the thickets, as if someone had gone before them. This made Mr. So even more confident that they were on the right path and that the temple truly existed. The men continued walking, unaware that far behind them, through the dense trees, a dark figure with glowing red eyes was following them parallel to the 4 men. Its eyes stared intently at the group, seemingly trying to pierce through the trees to follow. Mett tried to listen carefully to see if the sound was still there, but luckily it wasn't. Still, he was scared, so he kept looking around and behind him, but there was nothing. Several times, not paying attention, he stumbled and almost fell forward, making the other men complain. "What are you doing? You're going to trip and fall." Mett could only apologize and continue walking. He still had the feeling that someone was following the group. After an unknown amount of time, the group finally stood deep in the forest. Tired and sore, the men sat down. Mr. Thorn groaned. "Good heavens! Why is it so far? I'm going to die. I don't know if that temple is even real, but I'm completely out of breath." Mr. So's face tightened. "Just calm down, my friends. According to what I heard, we're almost there. They said when you see an ancient tree that's so big 10 people can't hug it, you're close. Look, is that tree over there like that? The group looked at the tree Mr. So was pointing to in front of them, and their faces lit up with joy. Perhaps the temple wasn't far away now. Mett, however, remained silent, looking around. He felt as if someone was staring at him from all directions, making it hard for him to breathe. His heart rate quickened, and his teeth chattered. Jack saw this and asked Mett, "Hey, what's wrong with you? You've been silent for a while. Your face is pale, like you've seen a ghost. Stop playing games." Mett couldn't completely calm down. The more time passed, the more he felt as if an unseen presence was following them, getting closer and closer. Mett stammered, I think someone is following us." Jack pointed at Mett and laughed. "Oh, come on. You really believe in ghosts now?" "Because of those people earlier?" "Stop it with the treasure ghosts and demons. Just stay calm and stop making things up." The other two also laughed, surprised that Mett was so jumpy. Mett remained seated on the log looking around. His breathing grew heavier and heavier. The forest air was biting cold, but now he was covered in sweat. Sweat dripped down, soaking the back of his shirt. Mett's hands were now clammy and trembling from fear that something was coming. The others continued to joke, looking at Mett's scared expression. They didn't know that, just as Mett felt, behind the interwoven trees, a shadowy figure, its shape unclear, with glowing red eyes filled with malice, was slowly moving towards the group. The dim darkness and gloomy atmosphere of the forest created a suffocating feeling. On the towering trees, squirrels leaped back and forth between branches. At times, they would stop and fix their eyes on the men trudging below, emitting sharp chirps. More than anyone, Mett felt the increasing danger lurking in this deep, isolated forest. The deeper they went, the stronger his fear grew. The sense of danger could come from wild beasts somewhere nearby, and also from unseen, shapeless entities. They were lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. The group continued to stumble deeper into the forest, growing disheartened. They walked and walked, but the rumored temple never appeared. All they saw were trees. Jack irritably said, "See, there's no temple. This is just a waste of time. Let's go back. It's getting too late." But Mr. So waved him off. "We've come all this way. Why turn back now? Let's just go a little further." Mr. Thorne stood silently, watching the two men argue, not knowing what to say. Then he turned to look at Mett, who was standing a little distance away, stiff, staring intently at something. Mr. Thorne walked over and asked, "What are you looking at?" The other two were still arguing about whether to continue or turn back. Noticing Mett's strange behavior, they approached him. Mett stood motionless, his eyes wide and red, staring into the distance. He didn't hear his friends calling him, just trembled and mumbled something. "Mett, what are you looking at?" "Mett?" The group asked each other what he was looking at. That made him tremble so much. Jack, however, thought Mett was playing ghost tricks to scare them. Mett, as if hearing a voice from afar, turned to look at his friends with an expression of extreme horror. His left arm trembled as he slowly raised it, pointing his index finger into the distance, stammering breathlessly. The temple. It's over there." The group paled and trembled, looking in the direction Mett was pointing, squinting their eyes. Jack, still skeptical, said, "What? There's nothing there. Just trees." Mett, still trembling, insisted, "No, it's right there in front in the distance." He affirmed with certainty that the temple was right in front of them, about 10 meters away. But the other three only saw trees. And more trees. "Mr. So then said, 'Give me the torch. Quick!' Mr. Thorne handed the torch to Mr. So. Mr. So took it and walked straight ahead, the weak flame flickering in front of him. I see. He carefully made his way through the bushes. The other two could only wait anxiously, while Mett clearly saw a large, imposing temple appearing right in front of them.
Wow.
The others stood there waiting, none of them noticing the dark shadow lurking behind them, silently flitting back and forth. The chilling cold radiating from these dark shadows was so intense that it made the entire group shiver uncontrollably, a prickling sensation running down their spines, further intensifying the anxious anticipation. Mr. So took a few more steps forward, then gasped, his mouth agape as he stared ahead, stammering that the temple, "It's here." The others also felt a jolt run down their spines. So, the rumored temple was indeed real. Now, all they had to do was go inside and see if there was gold. Quickly, the three men ran towards Mr. So. The group wasted no more time and went inside the temple. Once inside, they were not disappointed. There were countless gold and silver treasures, left by who knows whom. The group shouted with joy, "Wow! Look!" Mett was completely blinded by the gold and silver. All the fear he had felt since entering the forest vanished. He happily held the gold in his hands, his eyes gleaming with excitement. He knew that from now on, he wouldn't have to live in poverty, stealing, and being looked down upon by others. The men didn't think twice, grabbing their prepared bags and stuffing them with many gold and jewels. Mett, as he took the treasures, imagined the scene of wealth and prosperity right before his eyes, satisfying his greed. The men hurried to leave, wanting to get out before daylight and potential trouble. Mett was still the last one, carrying a heavy bag full of gold. At the temple's entrance, he was drawn to something. He stopped and looked at a jade pendant that seemed to glow in the dark, placed right in the middle of the altar, inside the temple. He pondered for a long time, then slowly raised his trembling hand, picked up the jade pendant, and put it in his pocket. Then he went to join the other three. Outside, the other men, not seeing Mett, asked, "Hey, where's Mett?" Jack chuckled dismissively. "He's still in there, hasn't come out yet. Probably trying to grab a little more. That greedy fool. The same guy who was scared of ghosts earlier." Just as he finished speaking, Mett's figure ran out from inside, looking at the three men and saying, "Let's go. Everyone. It'll be trouble if it gets light." The other three just shook their heads, said nothing more, and quickly left. Inside the temple, the dragon plate that had held the jade pendant earlier suddenly cracked and shattered. Then a black mist enveloped the entire temple, sucking in all the wandering spirits in the forest and coalescing into the form of a woman. She stood there, her eyes glowing green, staring in the direction the four men were moving. Her lips curled into a smile, her long fingernails suddenly retracted, and her expression changed, no longer fierce. The ghostly figure rapidly transformed into a beautiful young woman, who then walked down the path the four men had taken, making their way out of the forest. As she left the temple, it completely vanished into the dark night, returning the forest to its normal state, as if no temple had ever existed. Only the chilling wind remained, and a few squirrels still leaped playfully on the branches. The sound of crickets echoed. The men were overjoyed with their newfound treasure, so happy they walked without feeling tired. The men finally exited the forest and returned home, their minds filled with countless plans for the future. None of them knew that they had just disturbed something that should never have been touched. Now they would regret their foolish decision, and those lazy thieves had unwittingly sealed their own death sentences. A few days later, the treasure hunt in the forest, just as the four men had thought, resulted in nothing happening. The villagers around knew nothing until a group of officials came to continue the investigation of the temple. "Hey, Mrs. Mai, have you heard the news?" Mrs. Mai, who was bundling some vegetables, stood up, looked at Mrs. Key, and asked, "What's going on?" "I'm buying vegetables so I can get back before it's too late. Haven't you heard, Mrs.?" Mai was stunned. "Heard what? What are you mumbling about?" "No one knows what you're talking about." The vegetable seller also focused her attention, waiting expectantly. "Mrs. He continued, "Well, today I heard that the people who found the temple in the forest led some officials in to examine it. But those officials came back saying that when they got there, there was no temple. It was just forest all around, as if it had never existed." Both the vegetable seller and Mrs. Mai were utterly astonished. Mrs. Mai asked, "Is that true? Was that temple real? How could it disappear after just a few days? Of course it's true." "Why wouldn't it be? The officials came to inspect it once before and confirmed there was a temple there. The only thing they wouldn't reveal was whether there was gold and silver." Mrs. Mai nodded. "Ah, I forgot. The authorities confirmed it. But is it really true, ma'am? Today, people went there, and there was nothing." Her face full of bewilderment, she stammered, "Yes, those people just came back. I had some business up there, so I heard the rumors. They said it was completely empty. Nothing there at all. And the huge, towering temple just vanished without a trace after only a few days. This is truly strange, ma'am." Other women, hearing the commotion, ran over. They gathered, gossiping about the news. At a nearby dog meat restaurant, Jack accidentally overheard the women talking. His face turned pale with a hint of terror. He thought to himself, "Good heavens, nothing there? But I clearly took gold from there just the other day. How can there be no temple now?" Jack stood frozen for a moment. Then he paid for the dog meat and left. Walking along the road, he couldn't stop thinking about what he had just heard. From that day on, at their drinking sessions, Jack told his friends about what he'd heard. But Mett only said, "That's even better. The temple disappeared, and no one knows the gold and silver were taken. We don't have to worry about being exposed." Jack found this reasonable, but still said, "I know, but we still need to be careful. We can't just spend money like we're rich, or someone might get suspicious. If this gets out, we're dead meat." The others nodded and continued their merrymaking. Around midnight, everyone was too drunk to go home, so they stayed and slept at Mr. Thorne's house. At Old Man Ben's house, it was late, and he still hadn't seen his son return. He sighed, closed the door, and went to bed. Of course, thinking about what his son had said earlier, he felt happy and wasn't annoyed that Mett was out drinking all night. He casually walked to the altar, lit an incense stick for his wife, and whispered, "My dear, alive or dead, please protect him. Soon he will find a job. I don't wish for wealth, only that he becomes a good man, able to take care of himself and his future family. That would be enough for me." After lighting the incense, he went back to his room to rest. As he lay down, he heard a banging sound coming from inside Mett's room. It was past midnight, and Mett still hadn't returned. For some unknown reason, a clattering sound suddenly emanated from his son's room, as if someone was doing something in there. It wouldn't be remarkable if the sound didn't persist without stopping. At first, Old Man Ben didn't pay attention, but the clattering continued to echo in the adjacent room, making him open his eyes wide, annoyed. "Damn it! It's the middle of the night. What's all that annoying banging?" He lay still for a moment, waiting to see if the sound would stop, but it only made him more irritated. As the incessant clattering continued, he mumbled, "What is that boy doing in there?" After asking, he suddenly remembered that his son hadn't come home from drinking yet, and he had locked the door from the inside earlier. So now, even if he wanted to, he couldn't get into the house. So where was that sound coming from? The old man shivered and sat up, thinking to himself, could it be a thief? He trembled all over at the thought that had just popped into his head. If there really was a thief in the house, what would he do? Mett was nowhere to be found. The old man was old. How could he catch a thief? He used to think there was nothing in his house for thieves to even consider. But recently, Mett had somehow come home with some money, saying he'd earned it from somewhere over the past few days. Perhaps a thief had accidentally found out, and now they were here to steal. Scared, he was about to shout, but stopped. If he screamed now, would anyone come to save him in time? Or would he be in even greater danger? His room was only separated from his son's room by a wooden partition, and the sound was coming from there. Old Man Ben decided to creep over and see who was making noise in his son's room. So he tiptoed over and stood next to the partition. After fumbling for a while, he found a small crack between the wooden planks, wide enough for him to peek into the other room. The sound was still going on. The narrow crack limited his view, making it uncomfortable. He had to strain to see through. Luckily, after a moment, he could see a part of his son's bed. There seemed to be a faint, mysterious light coming from something there. He watched for another moment. His breath hitched, his heart pounded, fearing that whatever was in that room would discover him. He watched for another moment. His breath hitched, his heart pounded, fearing that whatever was in that room would discover him. As he focused, just as Old Man Ben suspected, a shadowy figure indeed appeared in his son's room. Old Man Ben's eyes became more and more focused on that figure. However, it wasn't a thief rummaging through his son's belongings, as he had thought. The figure was just sitting silently on the bed, neither male nor female, completely shrouded in a strange light he had never seen before. After a long while, he pulled his face away from the crack and wondered, "What in the world is that boy doing in there? And what kind of light is that?" Old Man Ben stood silently. The only sound was the incessant clattering from the adjacent room, echoing loudly. The more Old Man Ben tried to think, the less he understood what his son was doing. He kept racking his brain, still not knowing when Mett had come home or what he was doing in there. Old Man Ben then remembered there was another door at the back of the house. He thought perhaps his son had come home through that door. Assuming he was asleep, Old Man Ben no longer felt afraid. He walked to the door of the room, opened it, and stepped out, determined to go over there himself and find out. When he got close, he knocked on the door and called inside, "Mett, when did you get home?" "What are you doing in the middle of the night? Let me sleep. You're making too much noise." He stopped, waiting for an answer, but no one replied. The clattering sound from earlier had vanished. After a long moment, he asked again, "Mett, what are you doing? Answer me." Still no reply. Old Man Ben was frustrated with his precious son, who had been making noise and keeping him from sleeping. Now, when asked, he was silent, not bothering to answer. He reached for the doorknob to call out again, but he suddenly shivered. The door unexpectedly opened when he barely touched it. The sound of rusty hinges scraping against each other echoed throughout the house. The door hadn't been latched from the inside. The door slowly continued to open. Old Man Ben stood rooted to the spot, a sudden chill running down his spine, making him feel as if he couldn't breathe. His body trembled slightly. The door opened completely, revealing a pitch-black, silent room. The old man stammered, Are you in there? Don't scare me." Still, no reply. The space was completely silent. His eyes adjusted to the darkness. He saw no one inside, only Mett's messy bed, and Mett wasn't even home. Old Man Ben's hands and feet felt weak. Just a moment ago, looking through the crack, he had seen a shadowy figure doing something diligently, and heard clattering sounds from the bed. Yet now, when he came over, there was no one. If it was his son, where had he disappeared to so quickly? He remembered that when he opened the door earlier, he hadn't seen anyone leaving his house. So, who was that shadowy figure, and what was that sound? The question repeated softly in his mind, making the old man feel even more afraid. He reached out and closed the door. Then Old Man Ben hurried back to his room out of fear. As he closed his room door, Old Man Ben once again felt his heart almost stop, because the sound echoed again in Mett's room. The old man stood frozen, his eyes wide with horror, staring at the partition walls. The sound kept coming steadily. His teeth chattered now. He didn't know what to do. His face remained fixed on the wooden partition, as if waiting for something. After a moment, realizing there was no other way, he slowly, carefully approached the partition again. Once more, he peeked through the crack into the adjacent room. Just as he feared, what he dreaded appeared before his terrified eyes. In the other room, the shadowy figure from earlier reappeared. The figure was still sitting on the bed, its entire body almost completely obscured by the strange light radiating from it. Gasping for air, Old Man Ben's eyes wide with panic and fear, placed a hand over his chest, feeling his heart pound like a drum. To be sure, and to calm himself down, he peered through the crack again. This time, the strange sound suddenly disappeared, and the eerie light also faded. The shadowy figure he had seen on the bed was no longer there. He wondered where it had gone so quickly. Before he could even collect himself, a pair of green, chilling eyes suddenly appeared from the crack directly opposite him, staring straight into his. In that instant, besides the terrifying eyes, Old Man Ben could also clearly see something beneath those eyes, a mouth that seemed to be twisted into a grotesque smile. Overwhelmed by fear, he let out a blood-curdling scream, stumbling backward and falling, hitting his head against the bed frame. Then, passing out, knowing nothing more. At Mr. Thumb's house, Mett was still sprawled out on a mat, snoring loudly. The next morning, Mett came home to find his father slumped beside the bed. Worried, he rushed over to help the old man up, calling out repeatedly, "Dad, Dad, what's wrong?" Old Man Ben shook for a moment, then slowly opened his eyes. He looked vaguely at his son and whispered, "You're home, are you? Where were you all night? What are you doing sleeping on the floor like this?" Hearing his son's questions, the old man strained to look around and then asked, "Huh? Why am I lying here?" Oh, my head hurt so much. As soon as he asked, he felt a sharp pain in his head. He reached up to feel it and found a bump forming at the back of his head. Mett anxiously asked Dad, "What happened that made you fall like this?" "Let me take you to the doctor." With that, he helped his father up. The continuous pain made Old Man Ben wince. He kept wondering why and when he had fallen and hit his head on the bed frame. He couldn't even remember what happened last night. After taking Old Man Ben to the doctor, Mett returned home and went into his room. He lifted the blanket and saw the Jade Pendant still lying on the bed. He breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank goodness, it's still here. I almost forgot it in my haste. I just forgot it in my haste." Then he took the Jade Pendant and put it in a cabinet, being careful not to let his father see it. 1 year later, time flew by. It had been a year since the men went into the forest and took the treasures from the strange temple. After the news of its complete disappearance, the story of the temple was quickly forgotten. In just 1 year, the village had undergone changes. As promised, electricity was indeed invested in and brought up by people from downriver to serve the villagers, and was put into use. From the day the power poles were erected, the lives of the people here became somewhat easier. The 4 men also found themselves jobs. Although it was manual labor, it wasn't like constantly burying their faces in the fields. But for these men, that was good enough. This work was merely a facade for them to prevent people from gossiping. Since the villagers no longer cared about the temple, the men began selling the gold they had taken. However, the 4 men were not entirely thoughtless. They spent very wisely, never flaunting their money to attract unwanted attention. With stable jobs, their lives improved, and they didn't draw the villagers' notice. People genuinely believed that the jobs brought them better lives and allowed them to get ahead quickly. Some villagers even asked for jobs for other young men, but they were all refused, as they were told there were enough people. Old man Ben, since his son changed and started working and earning money, even bought a new, more spacious house, which made him beam with pride. As for the people involved in the electricity project, they found it strange that these men had gotten rich so quickly, and concluded it wasn't solely due to their current jobs. Considering their wages, it didn't add up that in less than a year, these 4 men had prospered so much. However, it wasn't their business, so they didn't pay it much mind. Among the workers was a young woman named Xuan, around 30 this year. She was from downriver and had no husband or children. She hadn't really thought about settling down with anyone until that fateful day. That day, everyone gathered at Mr. Ton's house for a drinking party. Feeling a bit tipsy, Mett asked everyone, "My friends, we from this rocky, barren land have only known hardship all our lives. Thanks to you coming here, we can finally hold our heads high. The project has been completed for almost a year now, and none of you have visited my house. How about this? Today, you all rest here. Tomorrow, I'll prepare some things, and you can come to my house. I just finished building it, so I want to host a housewarming feast. What do you all say?" Mr. Thorne nodded. "That's right. We built a house, but haven't had a feast yet." "How can that be?" The 2 men eagerly agreed, and the others, having no other choice, also agreed. Xuan was also there, though she wasn't entirely keen on constant drinking. It wasn't her personality. However, she still went along with the majority. The next day, as planned, everyone was present at Mett's newly built house. Everyone cheerfully went inside, but Xuan felt a strange hesitation. From the moment she arrived, she felt an eerie sensation about the house, a feeling that made her shiver uncontrollably, an inexplicable fear rising within her. Seeing old man Ben, he immediately brightened up, introducing himself and his son, and not forgetting to mention that he now wanted his son to get married and give him grandchildren. Everyone just laughed. After a while, Xuan felt uncomfortable and needed to use the restroom. She excused herself and went to the back of the house. Sitting in the wooden outhouse, she felt as if someone was walking around outside. For some reason, as she vaguely glimpsed a figure through the small cracks in the wooden walls, Xuan was gripped by a sudden fear. Her breathing became difficult. Her heart pounded, and she focused her attention on the crack in the door. The figure, walking outside, seemed to stop right in front of the outhouse door at times. She hesitantly asked, "Who's out there?" The person outside didn't answer, but continued to walk back and forth. A young woman using the restroom in a strange house made Xuan feel uneasy. She wondered who was outside. Perhaps they were just waiting for their turn. But why walk back and forth like that? And why no answer when asked? If they were in a hurry, why was their gait so calm? The thought made her shiver again. Could someone be spying on her? She quickly finished, opened the door, and stepped out to see who it was. It was already getting dark. Once again she felt a chill, as there was absolutely no one outside. To be sure, Xuan asked, "Is anyone here?" Still no reply. The fear and confusion in her heart grew. Someone was definitely spying on her from the beginning. As soon as she opened the door and stepped out, they must have slipped back inside. After a year of working here, Xuan suddenly felt an aversion to the villagers, especially those 4 men. She constantly felt that they had some ulterior motive with her, and that perhaps the peeping earlier was one of them. After a moment, Xuan went back inside, trying to hide the fact that she had been gone for a long time, worried and anxious. As she reached the kitchen, Xuan suddenly stopped, startled, then took a few steps back, her face filled with bewilderment, stammering at the unexpected appearance of a figure. Before her stood a young woman, about her age. She stood silently, staring straight at Xuan, a faint, slightly unsettling smile playing on her lips. Seeing the girl, Xuan didn't know how to react, her mouth stammering. She tried to think who this strange girl standing there could be. As far as she knew, from early afternoon until now, she was the only woman. And if it was someone from this family, that wasn't possible either. Old Man Ben had just said he still didn't have a wife. And his wife had passed long ago. Who are you? The other person still stood there, staring at Xuan, not speaking or greeting her. The woman's gaze made Xuan feel increasingly pressured. She barely dared to breathe now. That gaze and faint smile made Xuan shiver uncontrollably. Thinking for a moment, she stammered, Shalom? Did you just arrive? Xuan asked, as if she were a visitor from another family. But unexpectedly, the girl shook her head. She still looked at Xuan with those unsettling eyes. If she wasn't from this family and wasn't a visitor, then who could she be? Xuan trembled more and more. The noise from the men inside the house was still loud, but she couldn't open her mouth to call anyone down. She stared in dismay at the figure of the young woman, who was somewhat beautiful, standing before her. She trembled, her teeth chattering, as she realized that the clothes the woman was wearing were the same as the shadowy figure walking outside the outhouse. She stammered, Yeah, you... Before she could finish, the girl suddenly moved. No. Xuan saw her gliding, not walking. She quickly glanced down in the dim light and realized that the girl had no feet at all. The last image that appeared before Xuan's eyes was the girl's terrifying face as she lunged straight at her. After that, Xuan knew nothing more. Inside the house, the men now realized that Xuan had been gone for a long time and hadn't returned. One of them asked, Hey, has anyone seen Xuan? No, I haven't, brother. I think she went towards the kitchen earlier, then outside to the outhouse, and hasn't come back yet. The man frowned. He had had a crush on Xuan for a long time, so he became worried. He stood up to look for her, but Xuan returned. He asked her, Where have you been? I was worried sick. Xuan only grunted softly, not answering. As she didn't like him, she sat down and talked with everyone else. This man felt strange. He knew Xuan didn't like him, but she had never shown such open annoyance before. He deeply respected her feelings, so he quietly pursued her, hoping that one day Xuan would notice him. Because of this, he respected Xuan very much and never acted overly familiar with her. But just now, Xuan seemed very odd. Her return, right before she went to the outhouse, also felt wrong, not like the usual Xuan he knew. But he could only stay silent and see what happened. Perhaps Xuan had just experienced something unpleasant. He turned back to continue eating and talking. Xuan now talked normally, but her eyes kept looking at Mett in a very perplexing way. Mett immediately felt her gaze. He looked back at the girl, his breathing a little difficult. After all, he was a man, over 40, who had never had a wife, or even known the scent of a woman once. That flirtatious gaze couldn't help but stir something in him. Moreover, Mett had had a crush on Xuan for a long time. If she didn't dislike him, wasn't this his chance? Xuan still sat quietly, looking at Mett, sometimes making suggestive gestures that made him swallow hard, unable to concentrate on the conversation anymore. The party ended. By now, it was dark. Mett was standing, lost in thought about Xuan's gaze earlier, when a hand patted his shoulder, startling him. "Who's there?" He turned around and breathed a sigh of relief. It was Xuan beside him, her lips curved into a shy smile. Without waiting for Mett to ask, she leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Meet me at the newly erected power pole, at the end of the village. I have something to tell you." After saying this, she turned and walked away, not giving Mett a chance to react. However, her words still echoed in his ears. He looked at Xuan's retreating figure, overjoyed. So, she had liked him all along, just pretending to be cold. That night, as promised, everyone had left. Mett quickly found his best, most formal clothes and went to the back of the village. Old Man Ben, seeing his son dressed like that, asked, "Son, where are you going, all dressed up?" "To a drinking party." "No drinking, Dad. I'm going to find you a daughter-in-law." "Really?" Mett nodded. Old Man Ben came closer, adjusted his son's clothes, and said, "Then you better bring a daughter-in-law home, you hear? It's late at night for a girl to be out. Be careful, don't scare her. Be gentle. Don't worry, Dad. This time, I'll bring you a daughter-in-law. You'll see," he said, his voice trembling slightly with excitement. Old Man Ben stood there smiling. So, his wish had finally come true. His son was finally going to get married. He thought to himself, "Go on, son. This time, bring back both a wife and a grandchild. That would be even better." The old man chuckled and went back to his room to sleep, knowing Mett wouldn't be home tonight. That was even better. Little did he know that the moment Mett left was the last time he would ever see his son alive. In the middle of the night, at the newly erected power pole at the end of the village, the atmosphere was deserted and quiet. The villagers were all asleep. Mett arrived, right on time. He shivered from the cold and from the excitement building within him. And Pax. Tonight might be the longest and most beautiful night of his life. After waiting for a long time and not seeing Xuan, he felt a bit strange, as she was the one who had set the meeting, so she should have been there first. But then he thought, maybe women are just a little late. It's fine. However, what she had said earlier made him a little worried. "Oh no," she said, "a moment. What if she came and didn't find me?" So she went back. "Oh, what will I say then?" He mumbled to himself, thinking of going to check, but he didn't dare, thinking if Xuan hadn't come out yet and he left, and she came and didn't see him, what would he do? The weather got colder and colder. Mett stood, looking towards the village, waiting. Almost 30 minutes passed, but still no sign of Xuan. It was late. The night birds cried out from somewhere, sending shivers down his spine. After waiting for so long and not seeing Xuan, Mett felt a little disappointed. A dozen thoughts raced through his mind. He kept trying to find a reason why Xuan hadn't come yet, but there was nothing. He was about to give up and go home, planning to ask her tomorrow, when a cold hand suddenly rested on his shoulder from behind, making him jump. He turned around. Xuan was standing there. He didn't know since when. He stammered, "Xuan, it's late. When did you get here? You scared me." Xuan gave a shy smile and apologized. "I'm sorry, brother. Earlier, they said there was a problem with the power lines down there. So, I had to go check it out. That's why I'm late. Please forgive me." Mett waved his hand. "Oh, it's all right. It's work. How can I blame you? I was just thinking I was early, and you had already left. So, is there a problem with the power lines now?" Xuan looked at him and replied, "Oh, it's nothing, just a minor issue." She looked around as if searching for someone, then asked, "Oh, I was with everyone. How come you're alone now?" Xuan blinked and said, "I separated from the group down there, and they went home that way." "There are two paths leading to the back of the village, right?" Mett nodded. "Yes, just as Xuan said." Mett's village had two paths leading to the back. He came directly here because this was the only path with a power pole. After a few more questions, Xuan gently led him to a spot to talk. Then she gave him a necklace and said, "This is a gift for you. I hope you like it." Mett shivered, his whole body trembling slightly. Receiving such a gift from a woman, he immediately took it. He asked her to put it around his neck for him. Xuan agreed and bent down to put the necklace on him. Their faces were close. The fragrant scent emanating from Xuan's body made Mett almost hold his breath. His whole body trembled. This was the first time he had been so close to a woman. Just that was enough to excite him. Xuan reached behind him to put on the necklace, her lips slowly forming a smile. In her eyes, the necklace she was holding was quite significant. It didn't have a normal rubber casing. As she tightened it around his neck, Xuan whispered, "Take my jade, and you'll pay with your life." She spoke too quickly and softly, so Mett didn't hear clearly. A flock of crows suddenly flew in from somewhere, perching on the power lines above, cawing repeatedly. Mett waved his hand at them to shoo them away. Xuan still stood silently, looking at him with a twisted gaze. His eyes completely black, without any whites. Her deep eyes stared at the man in front of her with extreme cruelty. After shooing the crows away, Mett looked down and said, "These crows keep cawing at night. Let's go somewhere else to talk, shall we?" Xuan still said nothing. She still stared intently at him with completely black eyes, no pupils visible. After Mett finished speaking, she walked away. Mett reached out and grabbed her hand, but he suddenly froze. He realized he couldn't move because something was pulling at his neck. At that moment, he remained rooted to the spot, unable to take another step. There, shocked, Mett reached for the necklace around his neck. His eyes looked down, and as his hand touched it, he felt the necklace Xuan had given him slowly tightening. He stammered, "W, what's happening?" Xuan still stood motionless, not reacting at all. Her black eyes now began to glow with a strange blue light. Her lips curled into a cold, inhuman smile. The dogs in the village began to howl repeatedly, sensing the eerie aura at the end of the village. One by one, they began to run towards the end of the village. As they ran, they barked loudly. The closer they got to Xuan and Mett, the slower they became, as if ready to strike. They bristled, staring intently at Xuan, growling. Mett was still bewildered by what was happening. He struggled to pull at whatever was around his neck, which was tightening. It was quite large, and he realized it wasn't the necklace he had felt earlier. He turned his head around, and immediately he gasped in shock. What was tightening around his neck was a bare electric wire, connected directly to the power lines above. In a panic, he turned back to Xuan, horrified. "Hey, what is this?" Now he saw Xuan's terrifying green eyes staring at him, a chill radiating from her. In his mind, he felt the same sensation, a jolt, like the night he and his friends went into the forest to get gold. "Now," he stammered in horror. You are." At this moment, Xuan's terrifying, cold smile grew wider, a monstrous grin stretching to her ears. Xuan's facial features were also disfigured, blood oozing from her mouth, mixing with saliva and dripping onto the ground. At these horrifying images, Mett's legs gave way. He could no longer stand. He knew that the person standing before him now was not the beautiful girl he had thought, but a terrifying demon. The wire around his neck tightened more and more, making it difficult for him to breathe, unable to speak. The demon stood there, cackling, a haunting laugh that made anyone who heard it wish for death. In the cold, dark silence, the dogs continued to bark incessantly. Nearby villagers, woken by the noise, grumbled and peeked out. "What's wrong with these dogs, barking so loudly in the middle of the night, not letting anyone sleep?" With that, the person opened their door to look. He only vaguely saw a few dogs growling and barking at something. He didn't know what was happening there. Seeing the dogs barking like that, he remembered what people said. Dogs barking at night meant they were barking at ghosts. A chill ran through him, and he quickly shut the door. This person returned to his room, deciding to sleep and not worry about it. Similar to the previous house, others also grumbled about the barking dogs, but no one opened their doors to see what was happening. In the current village, Mett's body was charred, smoke rising from him, the stench reaching the barking dogs nearby. Mett had been electrocuted to death. And his hair was burnt and matted, his entire body stiff, as the current still coursed through him. His eyes were rolled back in pain, as if they wanted to burst out, his mouth agape, as if trying to scream, but couldn't. Xuan still stood there, staring intently at the charred corpse, then laughed, a cold, mocking laugh, saying, "Take my treasure, and you'll pay with your soul." With that, Xuan turned and walked away. her form returning to normal, as if she had never transformed into anything. She walked away, leaving the still writhing corpse of Mett behind. The dogs, when she walked past, no longer dared to bark and scattered to both sides. Some were too scared and ran away. The remaining ones only whimpered softly, not daring to bark anymore, because they knew that barking now would only lead to the same fate as the unfortunate man. The next morning, the entire village was in an uproar over Mett's horrific death. Some tried to untie him from the live power lines, but they were stopped due to the danger. Only when someone announced that the power had been cut could they retrieve his body. That morning, Old Man Ben, still in a deep sleep, was woken by someone calling him. Still groggy, he thought his son had returned. But then the news of his horrific death struck him like a bolt of lightning. Just a few days ago, he had been boasting about finding a daughter-in-law, and now he was dead, suddenly. When he arrived at the scene, the old man collapsed to his knees, weeping bitterly. He had hoped that, when his son married and had children, he could finally close his eyes in peace. But now he was faced with the tragedy of a father burying his son. The villagers buzzed with gossip about his horrifying death. No one understood why a man who was just starting to get rich would meet such a terrible end. The men who had opened their doors last night to check what was happening now shivered, realizing that the dogs were barking because of Mett, the one who had inadvertently brought about his own horrific death by the electric wire. That morning, when people found his body, it was still twitching from electric shocks, blood seeping from his eyes, nose and mouth, and smoke still rising from him. One of the people involved in the electricity project wondered aloud to another, "Hey, how can someone be electrocuted to death like that without the power cutting off?" The other person replied, "I don't know. Normally, if someone gets electrocuted like that, the power should cut off or cause a short circuit. But last night, I was still using electricity normally. No problems at all. And looking at this person, it must have happened since last night." That day, Mett's funeral took place. Some mourned, some gossiped. Only Old Man Ben wept uncontrollably. He didn't understand why his son had died like that. He didn't even know who Mett had gone to meet the previous night. What had happened to lead to such a tragic end? His friends were also there, helping with the funeral arrangements. Though they were horrified by his death, they didn't know it was connected to their gold-stealing adventure a year ago. Jack volunteered to help clean his friend's room. He stepped in and started cleaning, but sometimes he felt as if someone was standing behind him. He turned around, but there was no one. Only the sound of a distant drum echoing faintly outside. While he was fumbling around, something suddenly fell down, clattering, and landed neatly on the floor. He stopped and bent down to pick it up. In his hand now was a jade pendant, quite exquisite and eye-catching. He mumbled, "What's this?" He remembered that when the four of them went into the temple, he thought he had seen this object. Yes, that's it. So now Mett had even brought this back. Realizing what he was holding, his eyes darted around to see if anyone was nearby. He quickly tucked the jade pendant into his pocket. He finished his work and went outside as if nothing had happened. Jack intended to sell this for money. Looking at it, it was definitely valuable. Suan, in the beginning, continued to light incense for Mett as usual. In fact, she herself, at this moment, didn't know what had happened last night. Juan constantly felt a shiver run through her at his death and at this house. She didn't know why, but every time she came here, she felt a chill. 4 days later, after taking care of his son's funeral, old man Ben sat wearily by the doorway, his face hollow, his body emaciated. Only a few days had passed since his son's mysterious death. As he sat there, he heard a clattering sound from his son's room. Exactly like the previous night. In an instant, he remembered what had happened that night. Fear rushed over him again. Old man Ben's whole body trembled as he stared intently at his son's room. He was alone in the house. So who was making that clattering sound, as if something was banging against the bed frame? Old man Ben sat motionless, not daring to move, waiting to see if the sound would stop. The answer was still no. It continued to emanate, grating on his ears. Gathering all his courage, he slowly got up and went to see what was happening. And the fear inside him only intensified. He unconsciously asked, "Mett, is that you? Have you come home?" he asked, but it was only a question. In truth, at that moment, he didn't know if he wanted anyone to answer him. Because if it was Mett's voice, he might feel even more afraid, since his son was already dead. The space was still filled only with the clattering sound from inside the room. No one answered. No one answered. He didn't dare to call out again, fearing that someone truly would answer him. After much hesitation, old man Ben finally reached the room. He stood before the door, his whole body trembling, unsure whether to open it or not. As he got closer to the door, the sound became clearer and louder, even more insistent, sending shivers down his spine. He was utterly terrified. He wanted to run but couldn't, his body trembling uncontrollably, not daring to reach out and push the door open. The commotion inside the room still echoed loudly. Old man Ben stood there, undecided, not knowing what to do. After a long while, he finally decided to unlatch the door to see who was inside. The door slowly opened, the creaking of hinges echoing throughout the house, which was completely dark, save for a faint, dim light. Old man Ben opened the door, and inside it was still pitch black. The sound still echoed, making him tremble even more. He reached out to the brand new wooden partition. His trembling hand fumbled around as if he had lost all sensation, searching for the light switch but couldn't find it. The clattering sound grew more and more urgent, making him feel pressured, as if something was about to burst out. His breath caught in his throat. Finally, he managed to find the light switch on the partition. He quickly flipped it, and the incandescent bulb lit up, illuminating the room. There was no one there. The sound had also vanished. He placed his hand on his chest, breathing heavily. Good heavens! He had been so scared, he almost had a heart attack right then and there. Now that the light was on, he could finally calm down, though his heart still pounded in his chest. After looking around the room for a while, he turned off the light, intending to sleep, and lay down on the bed. The exhaustion of the past few days finally overtook him. He fell into a deep sleep, unaware that outside, in the hallway, a dark shadow of a man was silently gliding past his room, penetrating through the glass door, and heading straight out into the dark night on the road beyond. Just a short while after the events at Old Man Ben's house, Jack was walking listlessly, holding the jade pendant in his hand, looking around suspiciously, as if afraid someone was following him. After walking for a while, he stopped abruptly, because the jade pendant in his hand suddenly began to glow strangely. He stood there, staring at the glowing jade pendant in his hand. He mumbled in astonishment at the strange phenomenon, but then his face brightened, thinking if it glowed, he could sell it for even more money. He was about to continue walking, but he stopped again, goosebumps covering his body. A few gusts of wind swept past, making the trees along the road rustle. Far away, a few black crows perched on the branches, watching the road. A rustling sound of footsteps approached Jack from behind. The steps were very slow, just one slow step after another. Jack held his breath, the hand holding the jade pendant trembling. He didn't understand why those footsteps made him feel so pressured. So pressured that he didn't even dare to turn his head to see who it was. The footsteps continued to approach from behind, sounding sometimes far, sometimes near, right behind him, incredibly eerie. The crows in the distance cawed a few times, sending shivers down Jack's spine. Fear had enveloped the man, who was usually brazen and fearless, daring to do anything. Now he was trembling, thinking he was encountering a ghost. In another moment, he might even wet his pants. The footsteps continued to approach slowly from behind, getting closer and closer. The ominous feeling intensified as the cold breath of someone brushed against his back, making Jack stand rooted to the spot. He couldn't run, nor did he dare to turn around. The footsteps stopped right behind Jack. He stood there, waiting, his entire face trembling as he slowly turned his head backward. Just as he shifted slightly, a cold hand rested on his shoulder, accompanied by a voice. "Hey, Jack, is that you? Where are you going at this hour?" Jack recoiled in shock, turning around to look at the person standing in front of him. Stammering, "Ex-Xuan, is that you?" Xuan nodded. Jack, still scared, asked, "What are you doing here at this hour?" "Oh, I couldn't sleep, so I went out for a walk." "What about you?" Jack frowned. A girl couldn't sleep in the middle of the night and went for a walk. He said, "It's so late. Why are you walking around in the middle of the night?" "Well, it's a habit of mine from when I lived downriver. I'm used to it here, so I'm not scared. A late night walk before sleeping is fine." Jack quickly tucked the jade pendant into his clothes and nodded. He didn't notice that she had just glanced at the jade pendant with an eerie glint in her eyes. "Oh, is that so? I couldn't sleep either, so I came out for a walk tonight." "It's so cold in here. My parents just passed away, so I'm sad and can't sleep. It's such a pity for them, dying so tragically. I don't know why." I don't know why." Jack sighed. Quan then had an idea. "How about we walk together and chat to cheer you up?" Jack was glad and agreed, as he had nothing to lose. The two walked together, chatting about a few things. In the distance, the crows perched on the trees watched the two figures, cawing sharply as if signaling that someone was about to die. After walking a little further, Xuan stopped and looked at Jack with a hint of meaning in her eyes. "Would you like to come in here with me Jack seemed confused. Xuan looked inside a thicket. "I'll show you something in there." Jack seemed to understand her meaning, swallowing hard. In the quiet of the night, a beautiful young woman was inviting him into the bushes to show him something. Something that couldn't be seen out on the road. Jack was still confused, unsure what to do. Under the moonlight, Xuan's face seemed to flush as she stammered, "See, can we?" Xuan nodded immediately. Jack wasted no time, taking her hand and leading her into the thicket. But as soon as they arrived, Jack's eyes widened in horror as he stared ahead. He immediately let go of Xuan's hand. He looked straight ahead, trembling. The temple. What's going on? Just as he said, right in front of Jack was a large, imposing temple, which was not at all unfamiliar to him. It was the same temple where he and his friends had gone to steal gold and silver a year ago. Filled with dread and fear at what was happening, Jack turned to look at Xuan. "What is this, Xuan? What is going on?" He fell to the ground, his eyes fixed on the girl standing there. It wasn't Xuan. It was just a face that vaguely resembled her. She stood there, staring at him, her lips curling into a smile. Her terrifying face was just like what Mett had seen the previous night. Her eyes were glowing green and extremely frightening. He scrambled backward, repeatedly backing away. "Xuan, what are you doing? Don't scare me." Xuan didn't stop that smile. She looked at him with angry eyes and began to speak. "You can take as much gold and silver as you want, but that jade pendant is not yours." Jack was utterly terrified by a voice that was clearly not Xuan's. A voice that sent shivers down his spine, even more chilling than death itself. As she mentioned the jade pendant, he immediately pulled it out and threw it towards her. Here's the jade. I'll return it to you. Just leave me alone." Xuan slowly walked over, her slipper clattering on the ground, just like on the road earlier. She picked up the jade pendant, put it into her clothes, and then stood up straight, looking at Jack. The smile on her lips didn't fade. Jack hadn't even had time to react when Xuan continued to lift her foot and walk forward. Terrified, Jack kept scrambling backward, wanting to run away. But after a short distance, Jack's back hit the solid wall of the temple. With no way out, Jack could only sit still, watching Xuan slowly advance towards him. Her footsteps felt like they were blowing apart his chest. His heart pounded with fear, threatening to burst out. His breath caught in his throat. Not only that, Jack now felt as if, besides Xuan, there was someone else standing behind him, somewhere inside the temple. Slowly, turning his head backward, he felt a cold breath right beside him. When he fully turned around, there was indeed a shadowy figure sitting there in the empty space next to the wall. Jack screamed in terror. Mett! The next day, the villagers were once again horrified to find a charred corpse, so badly burned that the identity of the deceased couldn't be recognized. The stench of burnt flesh permeated the entire area, making everyone grimace in fear. However, after examining the items the person carried, they realized the victim was Jack. Officials concluded it was a suicide, similar to Mett the day before. The gold Jack had carried was all found, but the jade pendant he intended to sell was nowhere to be found. They said that Jack, for some unknown reason, had hugged the power pole in the middle of the night and connected himself to the live wire, resulting in his death by electrocution. To many, this death seemed strange. Officials couldn't understand why Jack would be electrocuted outside, in the middle of the forest, and then fall down here. Because simply touching a live wire would cause instant death. Could it be that after falling, Jack was able to crawl all the way to this spot before dying? But that was impossible, as there were no signs of crawling. From the position of the two power poles connected by this wire, it seemed as if someone or something had brought his body here. After that, it was just a question with no answer. The two consecutive deaths of Mett and Jack sent shivers down the spines of the remaining two men. Both had died suddenly and horrifically, under unclear circumstances. But to these two men, it felt as if there was something related to the gold-stealing incident a year ago. The two looked at each other, their faces filled with fear. That day, after Jack's funeral, Mr. Thon returned home, went into his room, and closed the door. He didn't turn on the electricity. He took out something from his cabinet, an object of beautiful shape. It glowed with an emerald green light in the darkness of the room. Under that light, his eyes took on a vacant expression, the face of someone without a soul. Behind him, the pale face of a woman appeared. Her lips were painted with thin, red lipstick. She smirked, her eyes glowing with a green light, just like the jade pendant Mr. Thorn held in his hand. The woman's voice then spoke. "Take it, and come with me." "Oh,